I was standing in the back of Rudy's garage in Queens, elbow deep in grease and half listening to him rant about spark plugs when my phone buzzed. It was Lena. Her voice came through smooth and rehearsed. "I'm divorcing you, and Trent and I already sold the company." That was it, like she was confirming a brunch reservation. I wiped my hands on a shop rag, said, "Good for you," and hung up without a second question. No yelling, no begging, just silence. Then I walked to my truck, got in, and drove home. Steady, calm, steady again. Not because I was numb, because 2 hours earlier, I'd signed documents with our attorney, Priya Desai, that locked down everything. Company shares, voting rights, sale authority, all frozen under my name. Quick note, before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. When I got to the house, Trent's BMW was crooked in the driveway, like he'd rushed in to celebrate. I walked inside, and there he was, lounging by my leather recliner, sipping one of my sodas like he lived there. He smirked. "Hey man, guess you heard." I didn't say a word, just walked to the dining table, set down a black binder, and flipped it open slow. "I'm filing too," I said. "And by the way, you can't sell what you don't control." His smile died halfway through the word, "What?" I pointed to the first page. "That's the governance reorg. You'll see the legal stamps, holding structure, consolidated equity. I've got 52% now." Trent leaned over, flipping through like he was still in the room, but his face was already cracking. I slid another folder across the table. Thin, clean, precise. "That's 22 months of Lena authorizing consulting reimbursements. 680 grand pulled out of ops like it was lunch money." His hand hovered, then dropped. "And these are doctored term sheets," I added. "The versions you two sent around when you tried shopping us behind my back." I opened my phone, tapped into our security system, and revoked their office access in real time. "You've both been locked out. Security's expecting you not to show." Lena came in from the kitchen like she'd been waiting for her entrance. Her eyes were already rolling. "You could have asked for a fair split," I said, staring dead at her. "But instead, you tried to gut me." She didn't answer. Trent looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. I snapped the binder shut, picked it up, and walked toward the front door. "Game's over," I said without turning around, and I left them standing in my house like squatters who just found out the lease was fake. I flew to Denver the next morning, didn't sleep, didn't eat, didn't think about anything except that laptop in my carry-on. I hit the Cyber Defense Expo floor, badge clipped, eyes scanning. Found Evan Cho near the back, talking with two guys in khakis about endpoint encryption. He saw my face, nodded once, and peeled off without a word. We grabbed a side room upstairs, blinds drawn, door locked. I set my laptop on the table and opened it. Evan didn't even ask why. He plugged in his secure stick and said, "Run it." Our telemetry lit up. 6 years of data, every keystroke logged, every metadata trail mapped, every file they ever tried to hide or delete marked and backed up twice. Trent's digital fingerprints were everywhere. Quiet transfers to layered shell companies, buried wire instructions, offshore pings logged at 3 a.m. from his condo. "Jesus," Evan muttered. "Who's this guy trying to be, Enron?" "Worse," I said. "He's sloppy." Trent had reached out to 2 private equity groups using an encrypted alias tied to his burner. We decrypted the headers and saw both sides of the thread, him selling my company with promises he couldn't keep. That's when I started building the packet. I flagged the anomalous vendor payments, fake invoices, payments just under the reporting threshold. One vendor was an LLC Lena's cousin set up in Delaware 6 months ago. I packaged everything for our board. Transaction summaries, log screenshots, timelines, asset trace graphs. Then I queued up 3 anonymous SEC tips, each one targeting a different angle. Suspicious trading volumes had popped up last quarter, and now I knew why. They were leaking sale rumors to friends, pushing phantom shares, then ghosting when the numbers didn't match. By noon, I sent client notices. We kept it simple. Unauthorized attempt to transfer project IP, situation contained, no data lost. I quoted the contract clause Lena never bothered reading, the one banning poaching or diversion of our work. No wiggle room, no gray area. "Want me to encrypt the email headers?" Evan asked. "No," I said. "I want them traceable." Then I pulled up Trent's email to a broker out in Jersey, offering preferential rights to our client list. My system had flagged it the second he hit send. We attached the original file, all the edits, and a timestamp stamped to the half second. By 4 p.m., their new ventures investors started getting an inbox full of fire alarms, anomalous transfer trails, legal disputes, audit flags, SEC tips, all within 10 minutes of each other, timed just right to make it look like a market collapse was coming. Evan raised an eyebrow. "You made it rain red flags." They earned every drop. That night, I watched the metadata traffic roll in from the shell domains Trent had set up. One domain redirected to a landing page with nothing but the words, "ownership dispute under review." They were trying to pull back, slow the fallout. But it was too late. I checked my inbox one last time before I shut the laptop. One of the private equity firms Trent had courted replied to him with 2 words, "We're out." That was the moment I knew we'd snapped the leash, and he felt it yank. The next morning, I walked into the Civic Commerce building like I'd walked it 100 times. Only this time, I had a flash drive in my pocket that could light the place on fire. I sat on the ethics committee. Nothing fancy, mostly just monthly yawns about procurement rules and donation caps. But today, I asked for 5 minutes. Got a nod from Chairwoman Sykes. She didn't know what was coming. I stood up, plugged in, and pulled up a simple title slide. Timeline, Coordinated Asset Behavior, Pattern of Conduct. 3 companies, I said, all touched by the same consultant, Trent Robel, all stripped within 12 months, then quietly dissolved. I clicked. Logos popped on screen. Arrows showed cash outflows. Then a slide of executive resignations, all within 2 weeks of Trent joining their strategic team. A few heads tilted. I clicked again. And here, travel overlaps. I pulled up receipts, time-stamped boarding passes, hotel folios. Trent and Lena had been in Phoenix, San Diego, and Des Moines during the exact weeks we were supposedly losing out on bids. "That wasn't a vacation," I said. "That was coordination." The room went quiet except for one guy whispering to another. I flipped to the next slide. "This one's personal. These were my bids, my contracts. I thought we just lost them. Turns out they were handed off." A murmur spread. I didn't let it breathe. "For the past 2 months, I've been working with a compliance officer at a European bank," I said. "This morning, we got confirmation. Cross-border wires triggered alerts that match siphon patterns tied to one of Trent's shells. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced down. 3 alerts from Interpol, accounts under review. I turned the screen to face the committee. Interpol just pinged us. Real-time notices. Investigations opened. Chairwoman Sykes sat back in her chair like I'd slapped the table. One guy dropped his pen. Then my phone buzzed again. Lena. I didn't answer, but her text lit up across the lock screen. "Stop embarrassing us. We'll go public if you don't back off." I took a breath, pulled up one last file, and threw it on the projector. "Here's Lena's e-signature on a side agreement with Trent's holding company, executed in February. She was inside our firewall and signing external guarantees without board approval." No one said anything, not for a solid 15 seconds. Then Sykes leaned forward and said, "Are you requesting an ethics bulletin?" "I am. Pattern behavior, coordinated asset stripping, industry exposure risk." She nodded once, and that was it. The vote was unanimous. We'd open a bulletin, anonymous identities, but every date exact, every trail mapped. I offered to supply all documentation with redactions. Nobody even blinked. As I packed up, one of the committee members walked over, a guy from the state procurement office. "You just kicked a hornet's nest," he said. "No," I said. "I showed you where it was hiding." He stared, then walked off. Outside, I sat on the bench near the bike rack and pulled up Lena's message again. "Embarrassing," she'd said. I snapped a photo of her e-signature on the side deal and replied, "You embarrassed yourself. I just turned on the lights." She didn't text back. Inside that building, behind that vote, an entire industry was about to read between the lines, and everything they'd built on sparkle and spin was now printed in black and white. 2 days later, I was in Zurich, sitting across from Rolf Steiner at the International Financial Oversight Office. Stone-faced guy, ran audits like autopsies. The blinds were drawn, coffee was cold, and the air in the room felt like static. I slid over the drive. He plugged it in without saying much, tapped a few keys, and leaned in when the report pulled up. "There," I said, pointing to the header. "Exactly 2.1% of gross receipts, every third Friday, labeled as field services." Rolf adjusted his glasses and pulled up the payout flow. It spiderwebbed fast, money hitting 7 dummy shells, then bouncing through 3 separate crypto rails, before finally settling into 2 offshore accounts based in the Caymans and Malta. I sat back. Those 2 islands? Lena called them just vacation plans. Rolf tilted his head. The distribution looks engineered. It was. Every transfer fell on a Friday afternoon between 4:12 and 4:18 p.m. Eastern. Same window, same tags. The screen lit up red paths, looked like a subway map drawn during an earthquake. Quick pings started coming in, Evan messaging from back home. Freeze orders prepped, 11 jurisdictions, timing synced, no leak risk. I nodded toward the screen. That enough for your triggers? Rolf didn't answer right away. He just stared at the map, eyes scanning like a machine. Then finally he said, "You've been patient to the point of stubborn." I looked him straight in the eye. I stopped arguing with patterns when my gut and the ledgers started saying the same thing. He clicked. A secure channel lit up. He keyed in a 12-digit code and hit send. Freeze order initiated. Let's watch. The screen shifted. Green boxes for active accounts. Then one turned orange. Then another. Then a third. Rolf murmured, "That's fast." By the 40-second mark, we watched the last 8 boxes flip red. Network locked, transfers frozen, hosts flagged. One bounce got stuck mid-hop and flagged the whole chain backward. My phone buzzed. Preliminary total, frozen. $39.8 million. I slid it across the table. Enough to make him run? Rolf skimmed the number. Also enough to make him stuck. Exactly what I needed. Outside the building, the Alps were still white and untouched. Inside that room, Trent's whole offshore circus had just hit a wall he didn't see coming. Rolf logged everything to disk and handed me a printed receipt for the audit trigger timestamps. 11 countries are now aware, he said. None of them warned each other? He shook his head. They all think they're first. I stood, pocketed the receipt. Then that gives us just enough silence. Rolf gave me a rare nod. What do you want next? Let the money rot. I want the emails next. Evan pinged again. Interpol just flagged Malta node for enhanced audit. Cayman office got a 9:04 a.m. visitor. Guy didn't smile. I texted back, "Good." Neither did I. Rolf walked me to the door, but stopped short. You know, most people just let go when the knives come out. I glanced over. That's what Lena and Trent counted on. He didn't reply, just turned and walked back toward his desk, leaving me alone in the hallway. I stared out through the glass at the gray Zurich morning, and I thought, let them feel what it's like to watch something solid turn to ice under their feet. That afternoon, I was back stateside and sitting across from Victoria Lynn in a quiet conference room at the Bayshore Industries campus in Newark. She'd brought in reps from 6 of our biggest accounts: defense, logistics, aerospace. Not a handshake in the room, just clipped nods and folded arms. Victoria cut straight to it. Were you ever selling? No, I said. Then I opened the folder in front of me and started laying out the real numbers. First, I passed around Trent's pitch packets, colorful, bloated garbage, revenue lines inflated by double digits, fabricated pipeline projections, fake client logos slapped on the back page. I watched jaws tighten around the table. Then I slid over the real graphs, clean, linear, boring in a good way. Reliable margin curves, delivered milestones, zero drama. One of the guys from Cumberland Systems let out a short breath. That's more like what we've seen on the ground. They built a fantasy, I said. We built a business. Victoria flipped between the 2 packets side by side. So, what's the risk now? I clicked the remote and pulled up a contract clause on the screen behind me. Loyalty trigger, buried on page 12 of every MSA. If anyone tries to transfer client relationships without written consent from majority control, those contracts auto-lock. Terms extend. They can't take what's not theirs. Nobody spoke, but the mood shifted. Less suspicion, more calculation. Right then, my phone buzzed. IT flagged a blocked login attempt to the client portal. Geo-pinged 2 blocks from our headquarters. A WeWork spot Lena used to brainstorm in. She's still trying to dig, I muttered, and forwarded the log to compliance. Victoria caught it. That was her? One of her proxies. Still thinks she can sneak in the side door. I changed the slide. Pulled up our project delivery tracker. Phase 1 ships in 9 days. Every resource aligned. No delays, no excuses, just execution. We walked through the calendars. Risk plans, contingencies. I had leads on standby across 4 time zones. Lena used to call it busy work. Said I was too attached to the process. Turns out the process is what kept the place from collapsing. Cumberland's rep nodded toward the screen. That risk matrix, that's not new, is it? Nope. We've run that model since year 2. Victoria leaned back in her chair. And the Phase 2 timeline? I handed her a hard copy. Realistic, not optimistic. Signed off by every team head. She skimmed it, closed the folder, and stood up. Then she walked over and shook my hand like a final decision had been made. We never trusted the sparkle, she said. We trusted the spreadsheets. The others followed. Handshakes, nods, confirmation signals. Nobody asked about Trent. Nobody mentioned Lena. Victoria turned back as she reached the door. We're doubling our renewal. Lock it in. That hit different. When they left, I stood at the window and watched their cars pull out of the lot. One by one. People think loyalty's about friendship. It's not. It's about reliability. Proving you won't disappear when it gets hard. Proving you had a plan when everyone else was winging it. I sat back down, opened my laptop, and typed one sentence to Priya. Client base is intact. Renewal rate just doubled. Let the sparkle people chase noise. I had paper and people who understood what mattered. The next morning, I was down in our office archives, basement level, fluorescent lights, dust in the corners, and the kind of silence that only comes from paper no one's touched in years. My phone rang. It was Marla from the independent audit team. We're seeing weird bumps in your 2022 filings, she said. Nothing illegal yet, but inconsistent revenue recognition. Especially Q3. I didn't flinch. Page 39. That's where Lena always got sloppy. I hung up and pulled the right drawer. Thick blue binder labeled Q3 2022, filed and stamped. I flipped to the exact page. There it was, clean figures, signed, notarized, sealed. Then I pulled out the matching fake. Different margins, adjusted totals. Same logo, but one extra zero slipped into a vendor total, like no one would notice. Lena never respected paper. She thought the cloud would save her. Problem is, the cloud gets overwritten. Paper never blinks. I scanned the twin sets, boxed them up, and stuck a tab on the top. Full disclosure copy. By noon, the IRS Special Investigations Unit emailed. They wanted a meeting. Offshore consulting fees from 2022 had triggered alerts. I already knew what they found. Lena called it strategic contracting. I called it lazy fraud. I couriered them the binder with an extra flash drive taped to the inside cover. Let them read it at their pace. Later that day, Lena's attorney called. Calm voice, forced patience. Hypothetically, he said, if Lena agreed to walk away without contesting the financial split, would you be open to resolving without pressing the tax issues? I let that hang for a beat. Then I slid an appendix across the table. Here's a list of false invoices and vendor shells, I said, all routed to the same strip mall in Miami, same mailbox, 6 names, 0 real services. He went pale. I'll review these. You do that, I said. But don't send me a deal wrapped in duct tape. That night, the headlines dropped. Attempted asset diversion under federal review, executives named. I brewed coffee, pulled up the agency submission portals, and kept going. One folder after another. Timestamps, internal notes, scanned receipts. I wasn't trying to bury them. I was just tired of pretending it didn't happen. You spend years building something clean, and it only takes one liar with a smile to start poisoning it from the inside. I didn't feel proud, or brilliant, or vindicated. I just felt steady. I was glad I'd trusted paper over ego, that I'd kept originals when Lena rolled her eyes at the copier. The files outlasted the story she tried to write, and now they were writing it back, line by line. The National Manufacturing Summit was in Baltimore that year. I wasn't on the main schedule, just floating, keeping eyes open, taking meetings off grid. But by the second day, the air had changed. I could feel it. Harlan Pierce from Axis Alloys spotted me near the logistics vendor booth. Suit sharp as always, voice low. "Hey," he said, "that merger pitch you made to us, was that real?" I didn't answer, just pulled out my tablet and handed it to him. He scrolled, Trent's deck, complete with falsified growth projections, fake charts, made-up client wins. I let him flip all the way to the last slide. "Okay," Harlan said slowly. "This is the same deck I got last month." "Check the metadata," I said. Trent sent the same file to 3 different competitors. Changed the logos, didn't even fix the typos. He shook his head. "Jesus." We grabbed a quiet corner in the back of the venue and called in the ethics committee chair. I walked them through the timeline. Each contact, each fake doc, each fabricated projection, all matched to Trent's burner aliases and Lena's draft messages. By that evening, we had 5 firms huddled in a private room off the expo floor. They voted unanimously to issue a joint statement. Industry alert on suspected coordinated manipulation. Parties under review. The legal teams would scrub it. The language would be safe, but every name not mentioned would be obvious. At 7:13 p.m., I got a text from a junior analyst I knew over at Brevard Holdings. It was a blurry photo of Trent pacing outside a Midtown office, phone pressed tight to his ear. The caption just said, "No one's taking his calls." Could have printed that on his damn business cards. I leaned back in the chair, watching messages fly across Slack threads and inboxes. Chatter flipped fast. His ventures funding round stalled. Investors who'd been hot 2 weeks ago were now redlining due diligence memos, tagging them with pattern exposure and potential misrepresentation. I forwarded the summary to Harlan and told him, "Check page 19 in your draft term sheet." 2 minutes later, he replied, "Hidden clawback clause. Good catch." Trent had baked in an exit trap. If funding fell through, liabilities would roll back to the initial partners, which meant Harlan's team would have been left holding the debt. I messaged back. He never planned to stay, just planned to extract. Harlan replied, "Pulling out before we get dragged in." At that point, it wasn't about me anymore. It was about every shop he tried to snake, every name he used to get in the door. By the next morning, the summit buzz had shifted. Panelists were quoting the joint statement without quoting it. You could see it in how people moved, chairs turned, conversations stopped when certain names got mentioned. Axis Alloy, Cumberland, Bayshore, they were already syncing language for their quarterly filings. Everyone wanted distance. Trent's name was radioactive. Lena's wasn't far behind. And me, I just kept my head down and let the truth do its work. When enough people compare notes, the story tells itself. The next morning, I walked into the SEC's Manhattan office with a plain messenger bag, 4 encrypted drives inside. Security scanned me twice. Nobody smiled. Agent Torres met me in a 7th-floor conference room. Gray walls, no clock, a carafe of stale coffee on the table. He looked about mid-40s, calm, not friendly. "You want whistleblower protections?" he asked. I shook my head. "I just want it clean." I unzipped the bag, pulled out the drives, and slid them across. 5 years, I said. Emails, call logs, ledger reconciliations. Plus 1 audio file you'll want to hear twice. He didn't ask what it was. I passed him the laminated index, color-coded by year, folder, and source. My cell number in Sharpie on the back. While he handed the drives off to the tech guy at the wall terminal, Evan pinged me with a secure update. Task force green-lit. Subpoenas deploying in NYC, DC, and Dallas. I gave Torres the timeline markers. The structure starts in 2018. That's when they first built the shells. Real fraud begins Q2 2020. Internal diversion masked as expansion. Audio files dated March of last year, 7 months before they tipped their hand. He gave me a tight nod. "We'll play it in sequence." The playback started low. Conference call audio, cheap mic hum, then Trent's voice, clear as a bell. "She's in. He's slow. He won't see the squeeze coming until we're halfway gone." Then Lena, "We need to make it look like a strategic pivot. He'll hesitate. That's his tell." That line hit harder than I expected. I had to clench my jaw to keep still. The room went silent. Torres sat up straighter. "Let's jump to segment 4. That part showed transaction sequences. Money flowing through shells, then rebounding through project budgets they doctored on the back end. I I watched one guy at the table scribble numbers, circle terms like insider proximity and deliberate misstatement. Another agent asked, how were they leaking it? I pulled up the embedded notes. Seeded leaks, anonymous tips to forums, press contacts, even a consultant blog they ghost wrote. All to fake momentum and justify sudden valuation swings. Torres leaned back. Coordinated manipulation, layered fraud, false disclosures, asset laundering. Someone cut in. You seeing what I'm seeing? Then a quiet voice from the corner finally said it. RICO. That word changed the temperature in the room. Nobody moved for a full 10 seconds. Torres nodded slowly. We'll verify sequence, but if this holds, we escalate fast. I stood, handed over the hard copies. There's an appendix in there. Crosswalks between Trent's holding firms and Lena's consulting sign-offs. The side deals sync to the wire activity. He looked up at me. You get everything from them? Not yet, I said, but this should be enough to start turning screws. He reached for the intercom, told someone to clear the next hour. As I walked out, 2 junior agents passed me in the hall with a dolly cart and 6 storage boxes. Top box labeled Robel Holdings, Suite 19C. By the time I hit the sidewalk, the group chat with Evan lit up. Midtown Suite, agents on site, devices seized, access logs locked, surveillance ordered. I turned off my ringer and stood still for a second on the corner. Trent thought I wouldn't see the squeeze coming. He thought I'd freeze, fold, doubt my gut. But I didn't freeze. I recorded everything. And now the weight he thought he could shift onto me was rolling back onto him, slow and loud. 2 days later, I was in San Jose, standing in front of a dozen tech leads and federal reps who'd been told for years that crypto was smoke and mirrors. They didn't expect much from me. Suits and cheap chairs, half of them still thinking blockchains were just buzzwords and hype. I plugged in, opened the dashboard, and showed them the map. This, I said, pointing to the first animation, is what Trent's crew thought was invisible. Wallet hops, coin mixers, layered transfers that looped through 5 countries in under an hour. Here's what we saw. I flipped to our overlay. Each node lit up like a pressure point. Same transaction sizes, same intervals, same bounce patterns, wrapped in new tokens but dragging the same metadata behind. Our models flagged the whole route in minutes. By the 5th hop, exits were sealed. By the 6th, funds were quarantined in isolation nodes we'd rigged for forensic logging. Footprints, I said. You can change the shoes. You can't fake the gait. The room leaned in. One of the Fed guys, Morrison, badge clipped to his hoodie, nodded. You built this in-house? With 1 dev team, no outside funding, and a lot of sleepless nights. He glanced at the others, then asked, You up for a pilot with the cyber division? Only if we keep the logs court ready. Deal. Mid-demo, our alert system chirped. The last major wallet, one we'd been watching for weeks, went dark. Then, 2 minutes later, pinged back online from a hotel Wi-Fi node in Dubai. My laptop screen flashed orange, then red. The system froze the route mid-spend, auto-generated the digital receipt, and uploaded notarized proofs to our secure ledger. One of my analysts messaged, Dubai wallet seized, confirmed lock. Total secured, $41.2 million. I stared at the number for half a second, then forwarded it to Priya with 3 words. Victim restitution plan. We weren't just locking them out now. We were clawing it back. Every coin they'd tried to launder, repack, and disappear. Partnership emails started rolling in before I even unplugged my laptop. Government contracts, private compliance firms, 2 overseas regulatory agencies asking for a sandbox build. Funny how quick they changed their tune. 6 months ago, I was paranoid, overcautious, distrustful. Now I was a visionary with time-stamped receipts and a system that didn't flinch when things got dirty. I packed up my gear, nodded to Morrison, and headed for the exit. Outside, the air smelled like concrete and stale rain, and for the first time in a long while, it didn't choke me. They tried to scatter everything we built, and now, piece by piece, we were dragging it all back into the light. The shareholder meeting started 10 minutes early. Nobody wanted small talk. I stood at the head of the table, plugged in, and pulled up a chart I'd been building for 10 years. Slow, deliberate, airtight. Clean ownership lines, nested entities, irrevocable proxies. A few of Lena's old allies shifted in their seats. One guy cleared his throat like he suddenly had questions. "The control block sits here," I said, tapping my side of the ledger. 54%, certified last quarter, verified yesterday. My phone buzzed. Legal ping, governance amendments approved, proxy attempts nullified. That killed Trent's little end run before anyone could bring it up. "We vote now," I said. Motion 1, restructure board representation. We moved fast. One by one, hands raised. Motions passed, no objections. The last of the deal loyalists were thanked, then shown the door. No drama, just done. I handed out the new board packets, slim, direct, built for people who actually did the work. Then I pulled up the screen and clicked once. A new name appeared in bold at the top of the slide, Iron Wave Systems. I let it sit for a second. No reaction, just quiet. "New policies start today," I said. "Ethics page 1, innovation page 2. Everything else follows." One of the new board members nodded. Another tapped the investor tracker app on her phone. Commitments started popping in. One from Boston, one from Singapore, then 3 more in 10 minutes. The stock price on screen doubled by market close, flat out. That's when my phone lit up, text from an unknown number. "Lena, you turned everyone against us." I stared at it, then typed back, "Me? No?" I showed them the ledger. She didn't reply. I closed the laptop, stood up, and walked to the window. Same street I'd walked 1,000 times, back when none of this felt heavy. And right then, it didn't feel heavy anymore. It didn't feel like war. It didn't feel like loss. It felt like I'd finally taken back my name, my work, and every person who ever bet on us in good faith and got burned. Behind me, the printer hummed, spitting out the final vote tally, 1 page at a time. That sound filled the room. No cheers, no applause. Just closure. Loud enough to hear and quiet enough to last.